So in this video, we're going to display a marker wherever we click on the map. And for that, we are going to use one more time the leaflet library. And just to make sure that we're following the right path according to our flowchart here, let's take a look at it. And so indeed, when the page loads, then we get the current location, so the coordinates of that. And then after that is done, the map is rendered in the current location. And so now what we're going to do next is to bind an event handler so that whenever the user clicks on the map, we can then display a marker on the map. So for now, we're going to jump this one and continue working with the map. And so we're going to basically render a workout on the map, which is not yet a workout, but we're simply going to put a pin or a marker on the map. And then later we can replace that with the data coming from the workout. All right, so let's go do that. And the first thing that we need to do is to actually add the event handler to the map so that we can then handle any incoming clicks. Now, how are we going to do that? I mean, should we simply attach an event listener to this whole map element here? That wouldn't really work, because then we would have no way of knowing where exactly the user clicked here on the map. So basically, we would have no way of knowing the GPS coordinates of whatever location the user clicked here on the map, because that is data that only the map knows, right? So when I click, let's say here, where I am right now, then I want to handle that click exactly at that position. And so therefore, we need access to the coordinates of the point that was just clicked. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is that we cannot simply use the add event listener method that we have been using all the time. Instead, we can use something similar that is actually available on Leaflet, so in the Leaflet library. And so this is where now this map variable here comes into play for the first time. So when we first wrote this code here, or actually pasted it from the Leaflet documentation, I didn't really explain why we were doing this. So why we were storing the result of creating the map into a variable. But now this is going to be important, because it's onto this map object here where we can now basically add an event listener. So the idea is similar to what we do using add event listener, but on the map we can simply do this. So map.on. And so again, this on method here is not coming from JavaScript itself. It is instead coming from the Leaflet library. So this map object here is in fact an object that was generated by Leaflet. So we can see that because of this L here. And so therefore, this is going to be a special object with a couple of methods and properties on it. And in fact, let's actually start by taking a look at it in the console. So map. And let's see what we get here. So down here it is. Let's get some more space here. And so here you see there's a lot of stuff in here. Also you see that the developers of this library also use this underscore convention here basically to make these methods and properties protected. And so simply by taking a look at this code here, we already know that we should not basically manipulate these here manually. So let's just look at the ones that don't have this. So there should be this on method that I'm using, but maybe it's simply inheriting that. So let's see. It's also not here. It doesn't really matter anyway. So I was just trying to show you what happens here. But here it actually is. So here is the on method that we're now using basically as an event listener. So here is the on method that we're now basically going to use instead of the standard built-in add event listener method. All right. So yeah, this was really just to show you a little bit the internals of the Leaflet library, because I think that it's important that you can also take a look at code written by other people. And so you saw that they also used the prototype chain, and very heavily, in fact. You saw that they also used the underscore convention. And if you want to dig really deep into that code, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff in there. But anyway, let's now add here the event listener, basically. And here we can also specify the type of event, and then here our callback function. So again, the idea here is indeed very similar. Now, when Leaflet calls this function here, it will do so with a special map event. Okay? So again, just like in standard JavaScript, we get access to an event, but this one is an event created by Leaflet. So let's just call it map event. And then let's actually simply take a look at this event for now. And so this console.log here should now happen whenever we click on the map. And so again, map is that variable here, which is the result of calling Leaflet, so l.map. So let's see. And it always takes a little bit of time to loading this map. So let's just click here somewhere, and you see that immediately we got this event down here, right? And then actually right here in let lng, we then get the coordinates of the point that was clicked. Great. Let's try another one just to see if the coordinates are different. And you see they are a little bit different indeed. And so now we can take this event object, take the coordinates of latitude and longitude, and then add a marker at exactly that point. So we already know how to create a marker, even though this is a very simplistic one. And so we're going to improve it a little bit. But for now, let's just take this code. And then here, let's take the latitude and longitude from this object. So we can destructure this, because remember there was a lat and a lng variable inside of map event dot lat, I think lng like this. But let's check again just to make sure, because I don't really remember it. So the pin from the beginning here is now gone indeed. Let's now click somewhere here. And now we got this pin right here in the center. And that's because we didn't fix our code yet. But for now, I just wanted to take a look. So that's the lat lng object right there. And then in there, there is an object with lat lng. So these are the two values that we just took out of this object. Okay, but now let's actually then put this pin exactly where we click, instead of putting it in the center like we are doing it right now. So this coords here is of course the center of the map that we specified before. So that is coming from geolocation. And now we want to use this lat and lng. So let's specify a new array, lat lng. And here for now, let's just write like workout. And again, we're going to change this in a minute to make it a bit better. But now I'm just interested in seeing if the pop-up is appearing in the right place. And let's wait for it. And there you go. Now I click this one, then here, and indeed it works. So great, that's beautiful already. But now watch what happens whenever I click. So whenever I add a new marker, you see that this pop-up here always closes, right? But in our demo, I actually have it so that they always keep open. So if I click here and add another one, and the data doesn't matter here now, then you see that all the others remain open. And I think that that is actually a better option. All right. You also see that I added some custom formatting to these pop-ups. So for example, the running one always has this green border, while the cycling one has this orange border. And that's because in Leaflet, we are able to add our own class names to the pop-up. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do with pop-ups in Leaflet. And so let's now try to experiment with a couple of them. So it starts here with l.marker. And so this is basically the code that adds the marker to the map. And this one is all still correct. There's nothing to change here. Then here we add that marker to the map. So essentially .marker creates the marker and then .add2 adds it to the map. And so that's similar to here, where we first select the title layer and then we add that tile layer to the map again using .add2. And all of these methods, they are in the documentation of Leaflet, and we're actually going to go there in a minute, okay? Next, we then have bind popup, which will basically create a popup and bind it to the marker. And so here we simply pass in this string. And so that's why we get workout in all of the markers. But here, instead of specifying a string, we can also create a brand new popup object, which will then contain a couple of options. And so that is what I'm going to do here now. So instead of this, I will do l.popup. And then here I can pass in a couple of options. But now let's actually go to the Leaflet documentation, because otherwise all of this will simply appear like magic to you. So I don't want to just write the code here and you copying it. Instead, I want to show you where I'm getting it from in the documentation. Because reading documentation will be something really, really important in your job as a developer. Because as I just mentioned previously, every library that you're going to use will have some documentation so that you can actually know how to use it. Because otherwise, you would have no idea, right? And so reading documentation will certainly become part of the job. So let's just go here to Leaflet. And basically on every page of every library, you will always find something called like docs or documentation. And so here is a bunch of stuff that you can take a look at. Now here I will just take a look at the UI layers, which are the markers, popup, and tooltip. So as for the marker, this is basically what we did before. So l.marker, then add to map. And so this is exactly what we already have. So this is an example, as we can see here, but down here is how we should actually do it. So how exactly this marker function should be called. So we can pass in, or have to pass in, the latitude, longitude, and we can also pass in an object of options. And so here are then all the options that are available for the marker. But in this case, we don't have any. So I'm keeping it fairly simple here. But even on the marker, we can change all kinds of stuff. For example, we could change the opacity, as you see here. We could also like rise on hover, so then the marker will get on top of others when you hover the mouse over it. And so, yeah, you see there's all kinds of stuff that we can do here. But let's now go actually to the pop-up. So you see there's a lot of stuff here. And as always, I encourage you to take a look at it. But now, again, let's talk about the pop-up itself. And so again, here you see that l.popup can take in an object of options. And so this is what we will do now. And that's the pop-up that we will then use on the marker to create a pop-up that is attached to the marker. So the first two that I want to specify is the max width and the min width, so that the pop-up always has a nice size. And so basically, we will now create an object with these two properties. So let's set this one to 250 and the min width to, let's say, just 100 pixels. All right. Now, next up, I want to change that behavior where the pop-up of one marker closes when we create a new one. And so that's this auto close here. So we use this one when we want to override the default behavior of the pop-up closing when another pop-up is opened. And so this is exactly the one we are looking for. And so by default, it is true. And so let's set that to false. So auto close, set it to false. And then finally, there's also close on click, which again will prevent pop-ups from closing, but this time whenever the user clicks on the map. So as we see here, that's the default behavior. And so let's put this one here to false as well. And again, I'm doing all this so that I can show you a little bit how we work with documentation. So finally, we have also the class name. And so as I mentioned before, we can use this one to assign any CSS class name that we want to the pop-up. And so this is going to be useful to style it according to our needs. And so in our CSS, I already have a class for pop-ups. So let's just search for pop-up. So here is a lot of stuff. But the ones that we are interested in is running pop-up and cycling pop-up. So these here are basically styles that I assigned automatically to all the pop-ups in Leaflet. So that's why they have this dark background color and why they have the font size that they have. So all of that I actually already styled here using CSS. But now I want to be able to add a custom class as well so that I can style the running activities with this green and the cycling ones with this orange. So later we will then define this class here dynamically, but for now let's put all of them to running pop-up. And so that's actually already it. Now finally we also need to set then the text back, because right now we don't have any text here in our markers. So if I click here, then you see we indeed get the marker, and it even has this class here. And let's just see what happens when I click another one. And yeah, that works. So all of them stay open just as we wanted. But as I was saying before, they don't have any content yet. And so we need to set that. And that is actually, again, on the marker, I believe. So it's a method that's on the marker. So let's see where it is. Maybe it's one of these ones inherited from layer. So you see that these are basically classes that Leaflet uses. And so then the marker can inherit methods from other classes, essentially. And so here is the method that I was actually looking for. And so set pop-up content is the one that we're looking for, because here we can then specify a string or even an HTML element in order to give the pop-up some content. Now, another thing that's interesting to see here in the documentation is that all these methods always return this. So basically the current object, which then makes all of these methods chainable. So remember how we did exactly that by the end of the previous section to also make methods in our own classes chainable. And so you see that the Leaflet developers are here indeed using the exact same technique. So again, I think that's pretty interesting to see. But now let's copy this method here and add it here. So before we actually open the pop-up here in the next line. And for now, let's just set it back to workout. And then let's go back and see. So for some reason, this always takes some time. Now here we are. And yeah, now it says workout. They all stay opened. And you see that when we click here, then the map even pans so that it can fit the new pop-up. Great. So this works really fine. But in the final application, obviously the marker is not put on the map immediately because the pop-up itself will contain data about the workout. And so we first need that data. And so here in the real application, when we click, what happens is that this form here opens, right? And so if we take a look at our flowchart, that's also then going to be the next step. So basically we have here render workout form whenever the user clicks on a map. And so in the next lecture, this here is what we're going to implement.